To this day, Ghost of Tsushima remains one of the most visually impressive games on the PlayStation. Sucker Punch implemented ingenious ways to explore the beautiful open world that went seamlessly with a story and gameplay that was a sincere tribute to Kurosawa movies. And while it can be argued that some of its initial success can be attributed to the divisive nature of The Last of Us Part 2, there's one thing that everyone will agree on. Ghost of Tsushima was the best send-off the PS4 could hope for, and it set a bar that many current games still struggle to meet. And that's why it pains me to say this. Even though Ghost of Tsushima was an inspiration behind Rise of the Ronin, if you go into it expecting another Ghost of Tsushima, you'll be disappointed. Not because Rise of the Ronin isn't as good, it's better in many ways, but because apart from a couple of surface level things, they're nothing alike. With that said, let's talk about Rise of the Ronin. In Rise of the Ronin, you play as a mercenary from a clan called the Veiled Edge, assassins who are trained from a very early age to kill the Shogun. At the end of an assassination mission gone wrong, you lose your blade twin and now it's up to you to roam the lands of Japan, which are slowly being encroached upon by Western forces, namely American, British, and French factions. And thus begins the end of the last shogunate of Japan. While searching for your blade twin, you inevitably get tangled in the political mess of the landscape. Through the course of the story, you get introduced to several factions working to either support, undermine, or outright betray others, and as such there's a lot of intrigue. The main ones are pro-shogunate and anti-shogunate, which in turn are made up of smaller clans and groups whose loyalty may or may not be swayed. You can align yourself to one of these two major factions, and the outcome of some of the events change depending on your decisions. One of the best mechanics implemented here is the Testament of the Soul, which allows you to go back and retry missions. If you want to see the alternate outcome of your choice, all you have to do is redo that particular mission on whichever difficulty you choose. Obviously, the major historical events remain unchanged, but the encounters leading to those events can be different, and so are the enemies you fight along the way. This lends the story more depth, which is also reflected in the characters. As you make progress, you come across a multitude of characters with whom you can share a bond. This is the game's social link system, which grants you different rewards like equipment and skill points as your bond with the character gets stronger. Each character has their own set of side quests. Some can fight by your side during other missions, and you can give them gifts, all of which helps you earn favor. Once you have gained enough favor with a particular character, you also have the option to romance them. Doing their side quests also gives you deeper insight into their motivations, how they play a role in the bigger scenario, and context about the smaller events taking place in the midst of all the action. For instance, there are questlines that lead you to discover the state of medicine in Edo and how Japan is dealing with the cholera outbreak brought on by the Western incursion. Another quest takes you on an investigation on how geishas from the Pleasure District go missing once they fall sick. But it's not all serious and morbid, there are some lighthearted moments sprinkled around. Like when a certain scientist enlists your help in finding a present for a certain lady he wants to woo, but later on you have the option to betray him and give the present to her right in front of him. Or when you try to help someone learn the ropes of love by taking her to an experienced geisha, only for her to see that the man she wants to marry is flirting around in the Pleasure District. Moments like these are a welcome break from the politics and the insane action that'll keep you occupied otherwise. The action especially. When I say don't expect this to play like Ghost of Tsushima, here's what I mean. Rise of the Ronin is a team ninja game through and through, so expect flashy and challenging encounters, freedom to switch between weapons, and some crazy moves that you won't really see anywhere else. The combat is a little simplified compared to Nioh, but much better than Wolong Fallen Dynasty in my opinion, so I'd go ahead and say it's somewhere between the two. There's major focus on parrying and getting the enemy's ki to 0 so you can get critical hits. There's also Ki Pulse, which helps you regain some ki while fighting, and that comes in clutch a lot of times. You can switch between 3 stances, each of which has its own advantages and disadvantages against other weapons. These stances also grant you a stat bonus, and as you progress through the game, you can improve mastery in these stances, adding to the bonus. Parrying also allows you to deflect arrows and bullets back to your attacker, and your weapon gets coated in the effect of the projectile. So deflect a poison arrow and your weapon will gain poison, or deflect a fire arrow or a bullet and you get a fire weapon. I will say this, getting the parries down can take a little while. I struggled with it for the first few missions, but once it clicks, everything else just falls into place. It's almost like a dance of clashing steel that ends when one of you runs out of stamina. In that sense, it feels close to Sekiro, and it's amazing to see Team Ninja having accomplished that with so many weapon choices at your disposal. Another thing that makes the combat so good is the integration of the grappling hook. It can be used to quickly close distance with your enemy, to disrupt them and steal their items, and my absolute favorite, fling them around and send them crashing into another enemy. Of course, head-on combat is not the only way to deal with your enemies. You can also sneak around and one-shot enemies in stealth. Backstabbing, jump attacks, and even grappling an enemy are all good options, but I'm gonna be honest, it sucks major booty because the enemy AI is terrible with stealth. And that brings me to the horde of issues I have with this game. Just look at this. You can do this over and over again, and it's not even on easy mode. I played the game on the normal difficulty and the stealth is just not fun. It's funny for sure because I did this every chance that I could, but I mean still, come on. It also didn't help that sometimes enemies had a tendency to just go invisible and RKO you out of nowhere. This also takes the fun out of doing some of the open world objectives that revolve around fighting. Now, Team Ninja has done a great job of bringing that era of Japan to life with their open world. It's very interesting to look at the worlds come together and you see Western architecture stand out in the middle of a Japanese town. There are lush plains and plenty of color in the environment, and the game looks absolutely beautiful at times. Movement is incredibly smooth and it's always fun to just jump off a tower, open up your glider and just glide from one place to another. The world is littered with sights to see and objectives to fulfill. The problem is, after a point, these objectives get overly tedious. I mean, just take a look yourself. It took me around 40 hours to finish the game and I was nowhere close to completing even half of the stuff on the map. If you thought the map objectives in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth were bad, prepare to be even more disappointed because this is straight up Ubisoft level open world padding. The good thing about that is that you're getting a ton of content for the price. The bad thing is that over half of this content is pointless filler that just gets in the way of the story. It's not that Team Ninja has done a bad job with the world. It's just that we're at a point where open world design is deviating from the put marker, fast travel design in favor of exploration that feels more organic, and that's one area where Rise of the Ronin simply doesn't deliver. While Neo 2 remains my favorite Team Ninja title, Rise of the Ronin is an absolute blast for the most part. Going into the game, I was a little apprehensive because a part of their game's appeal has been their ability to combine history with mythological elements that lead to some unbelievable boss fights. But I'm happy to report that even without that, Rise of the Ronin delivers an exhilarating combat experience. I mean, there's a guy who'll fight you with a bayonet while flying at you with rocket booster shoes. What else can I say? Don't listen to the haters. I mean, yes, it's not the best looking game of this year, but anyone who says it looks like a PS3 game just needs to stuff it. The difference in image quality between performance and quality modes isn't too big and the frame rate is smooth as well. There are some minor drops below 60 FPS in bigger settlements, but that doesn't happen very often and never during missions and fights. And the performance mode has uncapped frame rate, so I'm sure folks playing on 120Hz screens will appreciate that. There's a weight racing mode as well, but to be completely honest, I couldn't really tell a noticeable difference in the image, so I just played in performance mode. If I had to put a numbered rating, I'd give it an 8 out of 10, and that's simply because of my complaints with the open world and enemy AI. So if you're a fan of Team Ninja titles and interested in the historical setting of the game, it's very easy to recommend Rise of the Ronin. But if you're looking for another Ghost of Tsushima fix or just want a better open world, look somewhere else.